Hi everyone, my name is Megan Borocki. I am a first year MFA candidate in poetry here at BGSU. I'm going to be reading some poems for you tonight. It's really weird not being at Prout this year and being in person and having that face-to-face connection while you're reading your work. It's always, I find very strange just staring at myself in the camera, imagining people being here listening. So usually I would have more banter possibly, or tell some jokes. But I cannot stand the thought of me laughing at myself alone in my office, so I probably will not be doing many jokes. So maybe it's best for both of us that way. I also want to thank Sam for letting me borrow her phone. Apparently this pandemic has helped me realize how absolutely horrible I am at technology. I feel like my twin took those skills from me at a very young age, maybe even in the womb. So I am totally inept and just dumb at technology. So thank you, Sam, for letting me use your phone to record this. But about my reading, I'm gonna be reading kind of a culmination of work. I always find at poetry readings when I go and a poet reads like from multiple books or something like that through a period of time, I always kind of connect with those more. So I will be reading some older poems that I wrote during my time in undergrad at a previous degree, predominantly stuff from this MFA program that I've been working on, but also a rough poem that's still in like the beginning stages of development. I always find it's really interesting to kind of see where a poet's been, where they're going with their work, and where they're at right now. So that's kind of the roadmap for tonight. So I hope you'll stick along, and I hope that we all have fun. So I'm just gonna get started with the old ones first. Rules for young worms. Don't eat garbage. You're better than that. Instead, focus on sunflower droppings or a dead bird's bones ripe for picking. Squeeze inside and perform a ritual dance with the flowers that grew from her eyes. Don't be jealous of human creatures. Our beautiful bodies slide through dirt with the power of a raging comet. Moisten your skin on fallen leaves. Bury your face in a soothing mud mask. If you don't love yourself, regrow it. Don't be angry when kids step on you. Forgive them for not using their faces to move forward. Remember, you are strong as soil, like mums returning from Ohio winters, can regrow from the smallest of parts, from even the smallest of hopes. Thoughts on my mother's favorite flower. Lilies sprouted out of my eyes one summer, blinding me as the roots squished my 2 brown spheres into mashed potatoes and garlic cloves, a ruin to my color sight. No longer were they able to fall in love with worms on the sidewalk. I couldn't stop drinking water, would become so desperate I'd lick condensation off strangers' cups. The lilies made quick work of the brooks of my open face, fed on parched skin. A grist of bees helped them grow strong, pollinated them as they tangled their stems with blood vessels. I didn't remove them, even when doctors demanded their timely death. I told them how at my mother's funeral they called out to me with drooping petals, how I snuck them out under my skirt. Instead, I let lilies bloom out of me, dirtied beyond recognition, petals dancing in the sun, reflected in my eyes. So I feel like it's important for me early on in my reading to address a very common image that comes up in a lot of my poems, and it is the earthworm. If you know me, you'll know that I am in love with them. There's something about them that I just can't describe, and so a lot of my poems are almost like love poems to worms, as you can probably see in those. So that's gonna be a reoccurring theme image that you'll be seeing throughout the night. I am very pro-worm in poems. I don't think earthworms are in poems enough, and I feel like everyone should be writing about them. So yeah, there's that. I'm gonna start getting into some of the work that I have produced while here as now. My hands always grab what they don't need. I want to bury myself in the ground, feel my spine pop against rocks. There's a lonely comfort to this. being hugged back together by my own arms. I never understand my hands and how they move when connected to me. Something about the way they always reach for their last resort, my body. Are we connected? What does it mean anyway when fingers grow cold, touched until they become hungry for more? If their dirt falls over me, it'll feel like rain nourishing me whole again. There is no right way to do this, no how to be convenient returning. What is the right way to return? Like a worm, I just want to eat. I have IBS, so I'll puke it up anyway. A few weeks after mother dies, the casseroles and sandwich trays dry up. What remains is a moldy corner of lasagna. No more sweet cookies or fresh spaghetti bakes. Father has given up food that could fill his stomach, help ease the pit inside. All that remains is this incessant rot. I pick the lasagna up by my fingernails, making sure to avoid spots of pasta hardened by freezer burn, place rotten bite past tongue, and pinch my nose for less flavor. Wouldn't want to taste my guilt spent sucking a woman's breast in my mouth while family crowded around CPR paddles. I wonder, stomach curdling, if this is what it felt like, anger and being unable to go, that public death. Alone, I feel the weight of your urn on my back daily. It drags me down everywhere I go. Will this get worse? How does one reminisce with the dead? But when they keep beating my body back to life, for the love of God, let me go. Please. If I glow, will she come back? Nightly, I watch my roommate crack her boyfriend's back, breathe in till breath shakes spit to carpet. Always the same procession of release. Prayer, the act of praying. Each pop rock shift of my vertebrae will force bile to my throat. Can I confess something? Old friends used to beat me bloody for kissing Emily, disinfect me. Catharsis will never come, leaves me tired. Should I be snapped back into place? Or would I end up a smashed firefly, a glowing puddle of pulpy light? So these next two pieces are ekphrastic poems. I write a lot of ekphrastic pieces. I hope I'm saying that right. I feel like everyone kind of says it slightly different, so we're just rolling with it, hoping I'm saying it right. But something that I've always enjoyed in my time as a writer, and something that has become very, much so a passion project of mine, is the collaboration between art and artists. So what I mean by that is poets writing about music, musicians writing compositions based off poetry, also as far as other artistic avenues like pottery, glass blowing. I've worked with glass blowers before on poems, and they're always so fun to just kind of get to see the other side of in different ways that other artists go about producing their projects from beginning to end. So it's something that I always find myself going back to in writing based off paintings or something that I find on the internet as a form of inspiration to get me started, especially when I'm having kind of a dry spell. There's something that I always find are some of my favorite poems that I write, but the reason that these two are so close together and the reason that I'm bringing them up is because this year when I was writing them, I tried to take on a different speaker voice than what is normal in a lot of my work. And yeah, so there's that, and they're just because of the content of them, they were just kind of hard to place anywhere else. So I kind of put them next to each other in hopes of that working out well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read them now. Field notes number 2. I pick my pubic hair in an open field, dare farmers who are baling hay to judge me. Whistle a tune in my direction, it will only make me bleed more onto their metal machines. Words lose them. They make me wonder how different our piles are. Watch me hike my skirt up my calves, see me raw and untouched. If you want me to stop screaming, come place a wet kiss on my lips. Make me miss myself. Shave my head with clippers you find in your pockets. carve into me what you need most. Public decomposition. Thank you all for coming here today. I ask you to watch as the small feast on me, leave nothing but ribs. Let larvae grow from my flesh. I want something to be born out of me. Repentance can still be paid, so do not cry masses. For I will birth from myself the most grotesque things, bubbly purple mold and mushrooms from my heart. There is beauty in the bile of stomach boiling over skin. I will become heaven for beetles. Don't worry, my subjects, this is what I have always yearned for. Grass slowly reclaiming me as worms find their way back home. Witness me, the smell, and smile. Okay, so this next piece is the work in progress that I've been working on. Me and a friend, I guess I can say her name, Sam, have been kind of doing what I would call poetry phone tag back and forth. I've been kind of going through a dry spot with my writing and kind of feeling like I don't have anything to say, which I know I do, but just trying to find that voice again, especially after taking a break from writing. I feel like it kind of takes me a second to kind of get back into the groove of things. So we've been doing this poetry phone tag, and essentially how it's been working is she'll send me a poem, and then from that I either write something based off of the contents inside of her piece or a title, and then I kind of run with it, and then I send it back, and then she does the same, and we just kind of keep producing work like that, and it kind of inspires us to write about things that we wouldn't normally write about, and just kind of reach different avenues with our writing. I've been trying to do different things with my lineation and trying not to care as much about fine-tuning things so quickly, so this project has kind of been really helpful for that. So it is still a work in progress, I just need you to know that, but I'm gonna read it now. And currently the title of it is, I'll become a dead chameleon so I can haunt you while you sleep. You say I am made from the holes of my grief, but it houses my beautiful worms, and I don't know how I could live without them. Their bodies keep me moving and growing. They wiggle under my skin, make me look more alive. If we could both see the other's ghost, I know what colors they would be. I dream yours to be marigold or sunshine after rain. You always fill me with warmth when you smile in my direction. I will offer you my jacket to cure your shivers, hope you'll find home in the collar, that when you choose to return it, I'll smell your shampoo in my bones. If you saw my ghost, all you'd see is hundreds of them dancing in unison. I'm sorry for my decaying body and its smell. So for as to what color it would be, I want it to be whatever makes you need to see again, that every time you blink, you'll want to open them back up to me. Stuffed peppers. When people talk about their mothers, I look away. Don't have words to explain why. I can't remember the way she'd smile. Did we even look alike? My brain has turned to stuffed peppers, fogging up kitchen windows, their warmth reaching deep into my throat, leaving a ceaseless hunger each winter. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see you in the mirror. I found out cancer had come a second time when I was at the laundromat, washer stuff so full, water poured out. Nowhere felt private enough to escape eyes, the humidity of air. Please, mother, stay asleep longer, keep your eyes closed. I can't bear to know, tube down your throat, that you were feeling anything, only Marlowe's fur caressing your face. Okay, so this next poem is one that I feel like I've been trying to write for a very long time. I have a twin brother, if you don't know. His name's Andrew. He's one of the most important people in my life. Obviously, it's a very rare and unique experience to have a twin. It's beautiful and frustrating at times, but I wouldn't choose it any other way. It's frustrating because a lot of the time people will just compare the two of you, and it's kind of been a lot of us trying to rage against that, I guess, and prove that we are each individuals and we're our own people. But it's also beautiful because there's someone that is experiencing life in real time with you, and getting to kind of experiencing those highs and lows with you. And it's a magical and wonderful, beautiful experience. But it's very hard to write about, especially since I don't want to do disservice to Andrew. He's a great person. We're both very distinctly different people, like left, right brain kind of jazz, but I love him so much. And I'm trying not to just go off on how much I love him. But this poem kind of finally came out this semester. It just kind of happened. It came upon the page and I realized I was kind of onto something. I was reading up on Greek mythology for an assignment for class, and I ran into these two twin brothers. Actually, in most fables, they're considered twin brothers. Castor and Pollux. One was mortal and one was divine, so he's going to live forever. And he went to his father kind of begging to share half of his life with his brothers so that they could live for the same amount of time. And their father chose to turn them into stars so that they could live out the rest of their lives together and not apart. And something about that kind of just resonated with me, and I feel like that kind of was the push that I was looking for this piece. So this is I Consider Our End. 1. We were born little fools of April, came out of the womb, a joke already inside our bodies we couldn't contain. Our mother would watch with love in her eyes as we put baby fists to mouth, hand to hair, teeth to skin. Both of us would always end up crying. Both of us would always end up feeling. 2. How do we describe this connection when one does not know without? Years spent learning to walk together till our paces matched. You always took smaller steps so I wouldn't fall behind. When do words start to explain I am here for you? I am the urgency of heavy rain falling from clouds. Simply, I am active motion towards you. 3. You joke that you will die by 36, bones confident in their dirty return. I wonder how you could ever be so sure of something we can't touch. With each year, it looms over my head, and I'm reminded how our muscle cramps lined up so frequently we filled notebooks of the times to tell doctors, see, right here, at 3:02, it happened again. To feel your death through my body, that living pain would feel like 4. I think nightly of our ancestors, Castor and Pollux, one mortal, one divine. How cruel to live forever without the other, watch one turn to ash and bone someday, eyes unable to look away. How Pollux went to his gods, begged to share his life. Half. What did they feel? Fear, disgust, respect. But when those brothers turned to stars, oh how it must have felt warm. 5. What would I give to keep you? Everything, nothing, my life. I'd cut each of my fingers off, give up my eardrums and tongue just so you could continue. To know that the moment you stop somewhere, far away, I'd stop too. Okay, so I just have a few more poems left and they're kind of shorter. So I'm gonna do my tie-up now. I want to thank you guys all for coming to my reading tonight or coming to it in the future. It's so weird thinking that it's happening now and then you guys aren't gonna see it. Okay, sorry. But thank you for coming. I hope that you'll stick around for Leslie's reading tonight. She's a amazing fiction writer. We kind of exchanged emails at the beginning of the year because we share an office together, and her work is so amazing, and she writes poetry, and so she's just a double whammy, and it's amazing to kind of see how both of those work together and inspire each other. So I really hope that you'll stay around for her. I know I'm excited to hear what she has to read for tonight, and I hope you are too. But thank you again, and I'm just gonna read my last 3 and say goodbye. I need to stop romanticizing every interaction I have. You were the only person who could touch my neck and not remind me of suffocating. The way I would gasp out for you at night frightened us both. In the evening, you would twist yourself around me, prevent me from sleepwalking down the stairs again. Let me feel your breath on my skin, hot like black tea honey. Place one of your hands under the weight of my breast, rock me to sleep with a lullaby. Whisper in my ear, brush your tongue in the morning. All food tastes like broccoli without you. Please come back, my breath, pierce me with triangle teeth. Leave me wanting more holes. Meditation on grief. I eat toenails off the warm cement, hoping they grow dead relatives. Let part of them live on in my stomach. At night, my brother calls. Father has taken an ice cream scoop to mother's ashes, left east with her. Nothing could prepare him for the lack of her return. Healing didn't come when bare hands spread her to wind. No amount of lemon peels could cleanse wife from his hands. Strangers say grief gets easier, that a healthy diet of citrus peels, large quantities of cricket legs will punch air back into lungs, love back into aching bones. But as summer's last breeze kisses my belly button, what remains is the smell of mum pollen melting among nose hairs. My cremation. When I breathe out, I feel a burn deep in my chest. It never quite goes away. It's there on the train, in my bed at night, spooning me like a lover. Mother used to talk about the burning of chemo, the way skin buzzed, bees alive under flesh, fingertips stung countless times till feeling was extinct. She always spoke with a whisper never finished. But when my time comes, when flames wish to kiss my ribcage next, I will go silent. I will not hum a sound. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Leslie Benigni, and today I will be reading from my short story, The Gargoyle Instinct. I wrote it this semester as an experiment with language in pertaining to my synesthesia, which is a neurological condition in which the sensory nerves in my brain are crosswired. And so with this one, I wanted to focus on the lexical visual combination of my synesthesia and wanted to create a story that evokes a specific color. If you're curious, this one is to evoke a gray color. So without further ado, this is The Gargoyle Instinct. The train came on Tuesdays. Where it went, we did not know. We were told it was a serious thing just to be alive on those fresh mornings in such a broken world. On such mornings, I walked with Enid, that is we, along the trail parallel from the train tracks across the anemic-colored river. We were nominated to monitor each other, as everyone is, to have that kind of stoic friend in our society. Our school consisted of a massive block on the other side of the town, and after we took out our rulers and tapes from our linen pockets and did our measurements, as we are to do every morning, that's where we took our trek. We both turned our heads from the stony trail to the tree-bared clearings to see the smoke of the weekly mechanical visitor. Smoke was faint around the tree-lined bend above the river. Our society decided that such things, a part of nature like trees, bear too much imperfection and didn't reflect the key tenets of how everything should be. The depleters were slowly working their way up country to clear out the imperfect nature to increase our perfect nature. There were still some places to be cleared. I looked at Enid's face then, the face I had known since we were toddlers, smooth, healthy, round, and perfect in every way. And she looked at my face then, smooth, healthy, round, and perfect in every way. Our measurements for the morning were precise and consistent. She took a second longer inspecting, zeroing in the flick of an eye on something my face had to offer. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing." Our school sat on top of the hill that overlooked the river, a flat gray cube so pristine it looked like a metal crown. In small stretches of land below the school, one could see the bleached treeless strips that looked like someone shaved too close and poorly. I hated seeing that. I didn't tell this to my folks when I returned from school that day. It wasn't a remarkable day, just as every day was, naturally average. Our mornings consisted of elocution of being in which we gathered in rows upon rows in the auditorium to iron out any abnormal speech patterns or any sense of strong emotion in our language and voice. Our afternoons consisted of consistency training, in which we walked in straight lines with our nominated friends beside us. It was to make us active. Then was geometry, a subject dedicated to the ultimate precision. Enid was scolded, then isolated for staring out of the window by our row of seats for too long. My non-nominated friend, Dion, whispered to me the line in the hallway that he had even seen Enid twitch her mouth downward instead of in a straight line. Perhaps not an average day, but perhaps for Enid. She and I didn't talk about it on the trail back to the town square, a quite literal square, a flat stone for traffic and walking, surrounded by rows and rows of row houses and miscellaneous buildings. We only kicked stones on the path until we made it to the square, then lightly kicked each other with a nod of the head, our way of saying, "I'll see you tomorrow." Sometimes I thought an upward twitch of the mouth came from her as we parted. It was the same nothing I'd experienced all my life, but I didn't tell my folks that. We sat at the round kitchen table that is me, my mother, and father, communicating our routines and what we had done throughout the day to one another instead of how we were doing. From my father with his work as a depleter to my mother who spoke of the rising prices of food, it was then my turn. Our food, cut into precise white squares with a grainy texture, had no smell to it, but I took a bite solely for the nutrition and perhaps to make my mother happy or some indication of it. I cleared my throat and recited the phrases, the shibboleths of my schooling status. What I said: Enid and I measured each other when we met in the square this morning. Nothing out of place to report. We walked along the trail to school. We saw the train in the distance. At school, I learned more than I had yesterday. I sat with Enid, Dion, and Iniko at luncheon. I walked home with Enid. It was a good day. My mother nodded with the ends of her mouth pulled upward, but only slightly, almost non-existent. How specifically is your development in geometry, Orson? My father asked. Surely you remember the letter sent to us. His black eyes, the same as mine and my mother's, turned downcast. My measuring skills of angles and such had remained the same. I answered, I've been successful in my development. Hopefully you will get to see such improvement on my next report. I was worried, he said, with the learned monotone. You are aware that in order to achieve a minimum perfect score that you have to have 95%, not 94.98%, like you did have. I was certain I had at least an 89% at the moment. He continued, all of these measurements and measurements of success to be a functioning member of society. Ned and I discussed this at work. How is he coping? My mother piped up. Ned is making progress. I didn't know what they were talking about. I said that. My father scratched his knife on the bone-white plate before he looked up at me. His daughter had been sent on the train today. The tendons in his neck widened like an accordion, and he tightened his mouth. I remembered Dion saying that Imogen's nose was a millimeter off. In a whisper through scrunched lips as to not make creases in his face, my father said, I worry about you, Orson. You cannot be sent away. You would not come back. You know this, and yet... My mother held my hand out of sight under the table. That was not a learned action. Over the course of the following week, from the journeys to square to school, I noticed minuscule changes. Not in Enid's appearance, but in her countenance. We kicked stones on the way to the path on the edge of town, then lightly kicked and tapped each other so we could express friendship without the fear of delving into words and behaviors without such elocution. Then I pulled out my measuring tape first, as I always did, but Enid tensed her muscles in an unnatural, uneasy way. Even when she quickly measured me, as always, me thinking surely she skipped over some things, the length of my legs, the width of my eyes. She remained tense, keeping the ever-growing flickering nature of her eyes about me. On the third day of this happening, I asked, "Is something wrong?" "No. Why do you ask?" "You seem—" I hesitated. "I'm fine, my nominated monitor." Her lack of eye contact said otherwise. The shadows from the tree leaves along the path covered her body as she walked ahead of me. Leaf shadows covered me as well from my seat in our geometry class. It was the only tree on the school's premises that was too large for the school's depleters to chop down, strip away, like the other trees in the forest down below. I liked that tree. From the mind-numbing recitations of terms and definitions, I found a sort of respite within the tree. Its trunk base twisted and wound in strange patterns, extending out to the branches and leaves, I noticed, had long ridges along the edges, and some had none at all. Not fully developed, I suppose. I spent many classes like that, much like my nominated friend a few seats back, though I made sure to make my looks quick and random. Natural. I heard a pencil slip behind me and looked back like everyone else. It was Enid, wide-eyed and flickering as always. When everyone returned their attention to whatever droning came out of the teacher's mouth, my eyes stayed on her. When her pencil returned to her desktop, I saw that she had stared at the tree outside too, but with her head in her hand, almost peaceful. At luncheon, Dion, Inako, and I sat at our usual square table eating from square trays of square cubed food. The place had a sharp burning chemical smell. The room was noisier for some reason that seemed to place those around me on edge. No one barely spoke above slight chatter for fear of delving into such emotions and behaviors. The teachers that were to monitor us at each white pillar in the room looked rapidly at one another because they could sense it too. There was the same pattern of noise being repeated, scattered like those rare lightning bugs I saw once before the cutting of the trees reached our area. "Wonderful lesson today," Inako chimed. "Which one?" Dion asked. "All of them." I looked up from my tray as if I were seeing them for the first time and felt disgusted. Something set off in me from that microscopic exchange. What were we even learning? I didn't know. My head hurt and it felt as though my perception grew sharper. "Where's Enid?" I asked. Dion answered, "I don't know. However, did you hear of Imogen?" Imogen was the pattern of scattering noise. I thought nothing of it. Enid never came back to lunch, nor to the remainder of the day's classes. Not having that stoic friend of mine in close proximity made my skin crawl. No one seemed to notice or care to notice except me. The school's principal had stopped me in the main foyer before I left for the day, alone. "Orson, I need to have a word." We walked to her office, off from the foyer. It was empty except for desks and chairs, a radio, and a paper and pencil. No windows. I sat down. "I wanted to inform you that your nominated monitor will no longer hold that position." It was as though someone clutched my heart. "Why?" Her cheek twitched. "She has informed us of her own imperfections before you have." "I don't understand." "She measured herself because she did not trust your judgment. Upon my own measurement of her, she was correct. The width of her mouth is 2 millimeters wider than it should be as per the standards." "Where is she?" "Today is Tuesday." We paused. The principal said, "You've been nominated a new monitor. It is someone that has returned and is in need of a new monitor herself. Come in." The door opened, though I did not turn, and a girl sat down next to me. It was Imogen, Ned's daughter. Her shoulders were hunched over, but otherwise she remained the same, the way she looked before she left last week. "Imogen is one of the few to return to us. Imogen, this is Orson." "Hello." I didn't respond. "You both are free to leave," the principal said. "Orson, you may feel it as a valiant thing to have protected your friend, but in this establishment and in this society, we do not tolerate dishonesty in any capacity, nor does anyone when you go out to your occupation one day. We will be keeping vigilance on you, as there is some discrepancy with what has transpired with Enid." I blinked. "Yes, ma'am." When I told my parents that Imogen had come back, and she was now my nominated monitor, they remained silent, chewing their food. It mirrored Imogen's silence, which I found odd considering she was consistently defiant and loquacious till her departure. And now she had changed, and people feared being around her and thus around me, holding that same fear just like Enid before she left. I think it was fear that I saw in Enid's eyes when she looked at me. I thought about asking Imogen about her journey on the train on the way back to the town, but it didn't feel right. I'd asked my parents where the trains go, to which I got no answer. My chest felt tight and I remembered my techniques to bring my behavior to normal. Nothing felt right. My bedroom was on the second floor of the row house with one window, a bed, a small table, a dresser, and a backless chair. I lay there in my bed with eyes to the ceiling thinking. I wondered how everyone was nonchalant about a singular or just rare occurrence. I also wondered about what the principal said, how I had protected Enid, but I hadn't done anything at all. I wondered what exactly Enid told her. My eyes traced over the shiny surface of the ceiling, painted a pale blue in the moonlight. The images of Enid dropping the pencil and staring out the window entered my mind. I remembered her eyes, the wincing each morning for our measurements, not only of me taking hers, but hers of mine. She knew she was imperfect, different in some way. The following mornings called for a layer of wool on top of linen as the brisk wind scratched up our stomachs and spines and turned us bright pink. Imogen supposedly was my new stoic friend, with some emphasis on stoic, though this silence was plagued with something unnatural. The only similarity of her and Enid was that Imogen liked to measure as quickly as possible, sometimes skipping over the tiniest features of my body, but unlike Enid, she would measure all over again. And then, like Enid again, she insistently had a skittishness about her once she was done measuring me. I have to report you. What? Why? It's my duty. I need to right this wrong. What do you mean? Your eyes are 0.5 millimeters too far apart. I can't let this slide. I began to shake, but not from the cold, from the sickening feeling inside me instead. Slightly above a normal learned speech, my mouth burst with, "This is ridiculous." She took a step back, hand slightly raised. She said, I can't continue to be a nothing. Not when I've come back. I made that choice. And now I will be upheld again. Choice? What are you talking about? She ran out ahead of me, and the oceanic thrush of dread encased my body as my feet carried me forward. I knew what was going to happen. I just wanted to be in the in-between, the points of this standing by the tree, by the river. I like the in-betweens. I like the time it takes to get somewhere. I like the trail by the river to school. I like to see whatever this window to the world outside my village had to offer at such great speeds. My eyes never left the impressionist blobs and specks we zoomed past. I didn't care that I didn't know what they were because they lulled me to sleep. And as the rain came tapping on the train cabin window, speaking quietly in its evening way, I didn't care about that either. I had dreams for the first time in years, and I awoke with water on my face. I thought the window had slipped down somehow, but it was sealed tight. I thought I had been crying. I probably had not done that since I was a toddler, a baby even. In the few days after I had been apprehended, I heard my parents cry behind the closed door of their bedroom at night. I could have reported them for doing such outward behavior, but they loved their lives in the town, and I couldn't take too much away from them. They didn't want me to see, but I could feel their pain and disappointment. My mind spiraled more into the daylight. Enid knew my measurements weren't up to the standards either. She tried to protect me for as long as she could. The train slowed in its rickety clacking, and I saw that we had arrived in a city that harbored no color in the world in between its sky and buildings. I would have loved to have shook someone awake next to me to look at all of this. I was directed down a hallway into a room with blacked out windows and two chairs across from one another, with a desk in between with an assortment of small objects of all kinds of colors and shapes I had not seen outside the town, outside of any natural thing I had ever seen. Some had metallic glints, others looked like tools, and some just looked like monsters. A buzzer kicked on, and a door opened behind me. A man like I had not seen before sat at the desk. He had dark skin with spots and bumps on his face, hands, and neck. His hair went beyond the normal shaven head, standard, in tight curls, and he had brown eyes instead of black. He was a pattern of colors and textures like those on his desk. "You must be Orson," he said with an actual smile. His voice was strange, changing in and out of monotone. Almost hurt my ears. I nodded. "You can call me Dr. Victor, and I'm here to present you with a choice, as you probably know about." Choice. I remembered Imogen mentioned such a choice before I left. What kind of choice? Well, let me explain a little bit. He leaned back in his chair with his boots propped up on his desk. We live in a society of strict binaries, it seems. It's taken a lot to get here, but here we are. Where you're from, like so many others across the country, having a particular mentality and appearance, that certain smoothness and roundness of stone, well, like this gargoyle I have here. He laid his hand on top of a pale object that almost looked human, but had such strange features to it. One of the little monsters among all the colors and shapes. It has become a primal instinct to have an unchanging, perfect quality, hasn't it? To become the absolutely best humans we can be, to achieve a sense of peace and commonality. I suppose. You suppose, but it's true. That's what's expected with the standards. You have been deemed imperfect by your society, which happens from time to time. Right now, you are not at a sense of peace or commonality, correct? Pause. It is correct. A sense of physical, behavioral, and entire being commonality leads to a perfect society with no wars or illnesses or ill will. He smiled again. And we all like to live high above on rooftops, don't we? As a means to look down on others. I didn't say anything. He stood up from his desk, signaling that he was to go, though it didn't feel right. Not at that time. Though I say accept your imperfection and then reject it through means of quick surgery here in the labs we have. We continue to work in binaries here as well, and we have to be democratic. Someone that you know has made her choice already and has decided to stay behind until your arrival to speak with you about the other side of the choice you must make. My neck tensed. Enid. As he walked slowly to the door, he turned to say, "Just remember, choice 1, you get an elective surgery that modifies you back to perfection, and you can live in your utopic bubble with your family. Or choice 2, you can be who you are and have as much freedom as you like in your imperfection, but you will go into the unknown and there probably won't be peace." The room grew colder with each minute in anticipation as I surely waited for my friend. I stared at the gargoyle and it stared back at me. I wanted to crouch in its same position to mirror such an absurd stance, but it wasn't a learned action that I felt safe to do even now away from my home. I heard the door click open and my head turned instantly. What stood before me in all upturned mouths and eyes was somehow a dirtier version of my nominated monitor, my former nominated monitor. She had no dirt about her on her, but her skin was slightly darker, and her head started to grow stubble. She wore all green linen, and I was soon encased in it as she wrapped her arms around me. My legs instinctively kicked out at her, and she backed away. She lightly kicked my legs back like we had back in the forest, back on the paths. "Hello, my friend." "Enid," I said, "it's nice to see you." "It's amazing to see you. I knew you would be coming soon, so that's why I asked them to let me stay. The others I've chosen to be with said that I could be the one to provide you with the other choice." I don't understand what others. She had planned it all along. I knew you and I were different, not just our faces, but the leaves, the trees. They're imperfect, provide difference, which we thrive on and are attracted to. You know this. Well, what about home? Your parents, aren't you scared? You haven't answered me. What others? Her voice changed again and she wondered how long she could live on in people's memories, if at all. I asked her, but will you ever return? She ignored me. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Orson. We are good people and we've suffered enough. There are so many others like you and I out there. The others that I know don't care about imperfections. You can be a detective in this broken world, at least that's what they've told me. You can document and observe such things around you as you've never encountered them before. You can collect things you find on your journeys, document them, notice reoccurrences, copy, trace, make rubbings, do all these things and focus on one thing at a time. Record what lures you in and just live freely. My head throbbed in my skull. I said, if it's so great, then why doesn't everyone just go there? She paused, recognizing the slight shift in my voice. It's not for everyone, from what I've been told. We can't be accepted into any villages or towns, so we roam and fend for ourselves. I suppose it's all an unknown, but surely that would be freeing to someone like you who is like me. But will you return? I asked again. I've already made up my mind. They placed me in a room within the same building as Dr. Victor's office for me to rest and to make my decisions soon. Enid was placed in another room as far as I knew, but her time of speaking to me was up. They would unlock the door in the morning to give me food and hear about any progress I had made in my decision-making process. I thought of home and the people I had encountered every day. Their faces were smooth, no features, identical from one another, and now that I could truly see, it frightened me. I briefly thought of Imogen, what the choice she had made had done to her, the changes she had to have made to come back to society. Then I thought of Enid. As far as I knew, she would not return to our village, but then it made me think of how many people actually returned. Just Imogen in the most recent years, as far as I knew. What had happened to the many people throughout the years that made their departure and never came back? They had made that choice, but now no one knows where they are, if they're alive or dead, into that unknown that Enid and Dr. Victor spoke of. After a continuous spiral thought of deliriously staring at the ceiling, I must have fell asleep, because I only remember waking up to the sun burst through the room's window in the morning. I looked out at the skyscrapers with blankness, some painful clarity of mind. Everyone inspected my face. I was one of the few to return, and they knew it. I was able to be corrected, even the teacher knew it. Dr. Victor let me leave the labs once my face healed so that I wouldn't have any blemishes when I came back to society. The teacher ordered my classmates to turn and meet his own gaze to discuss some geometry term. The intersection point on the sides, vertex, I said with everyone else. My fingers gripped the edge of my desk, curling underneath until my knuckles turned white. I tried to focus on my teacher, on the voices around me while I remained silent, perfectly silent. Behind my shoulders, Enid's desk was empty, not yet filled by someone else that had a face that was smooth, healthy, round, and perfect in every way. A cloud must have moved past for the sun to cast both light and shade on my clenched hand, still curled at the desk ridge. The object of my previous daydreams and ideas reached out to me through the window. Its shade, rounded and moving with the wind, gently birthmarked on my hand with its shadow, reminding me. I clenched my teeth and looked forward with blurry vision. Thank you.